She was ashamed of what she'd become, but he held her like she was still whole. Asterisk. You're not standard Terran build, she said, her voice low and throaty, eyes wide with curiosity. You're enormous. Captain Jace Rayner stood, frozen, still half-crouched from opening the ancient stasis pod. His helmet light caught the shimmer of her violet skin, the dampness still clinging to her body from cryosleep fluid. She was tall at least 6 feet, lean but strong and completely naked except for the silver medical straps that had peeled away as the pod hissed open. Jace blinked. Thanks. I drink a lot of protein shakes. She tilted her head, her long white hair sticking to her cheek. Her golden eyes didn't move from his belt region. One hand reached out, smooth, long-fingered, tipped with soft claws, and hovered just inches from his body. Her tail, long and feline, curled behind her, twitching slightly. Don't open random pods on uncharted moons. But curiosity, as always, had gotten the better of him. She finally looked up into his face. And for a moment, Jace saw more than just the hunger of scientific interest. There was confusion, too. Maybe, and something else. Something warm. My name is Celia Vorn, she said carefully, her voice carrying a melodic accent. I am Morwaz, a xenobiologist of the Veilari, Prime Science Corps. I've been in cryostasis for 216 Terran years. Jace rubbed the back of his neck. Right, well, welcome back. She frowned slightly, then glanced. Around the dark, crumbling ruins of the facility surrounding them, her brow furrowed as realization dawned. They're all gone, aren't they? Jace nodded slowly. Your people? Yeah, the beacon you set up was probably stuck on a loop. Found it by accident during a flyover scan. Oh, nobody's touched this moon in decades. You're the last. She closed her eyes and drew in a slow, shaky breath. For a moment, Jace thought she might break down. But then she opened her eyes again and stepped fully out of the pod. She stood tall, proud, unashamed of her body or of the intense way she continued to study his. You're human, she said softly. I remember fragments from pre-cryo briefings. Primitive, violent, fascinating. We're a little more advanced these days, Jace said, then paused. Well, some of us. She didn't laugh, but her lip twitched. Your body is unusual. Her fingers drifted forward again, lightly brushing the edge of his utility belt. The males of my species suffered extreme biological decline. You appear undamaged, potent. Jace coughed, almost choking. Potent. Leah leaned in slightly, her nose near his neck. She inhaled. Your pheromones are overwhelming, she murmured, and your shape. It doesn't match Veilari reproductive charts. Held up both hands. Okay, wow. I feel like I should ask for consent before this becomes a hands-on biology lesson. She blinked, confused. Consent. Jace sighed. We're gonna need to talk about some modern social rules later. Celia stepped back, her tail swaying as she folded her arms. You are not what I expected. My data predicted smaller males, less heat, less size. Yeah, well, Jace said, trying not to smirk. Human men are full of surprises. She stared at him for a long second, then gave a slow nod. I wish to study you. He narrowed his eyes. Study? For science. He cleared his throat. Of course, science. Naturally. Before she could say more, the ground beneath them trembled. The facility groaned. Jace glanced around, realizing the structure wasn't going to stay stable much longer. Okay, it's number 1, he said, stepping forward and gently taking her arm. We leave before the ceiling crushes us. That's science too called. Survival. Celia followed him without protest, though her fingers lingered on his hand. Her touch was warm, strong, almost electric. She didn't seem afraid, just curious. As they hurried through the collapsing corridor, she asked about gravity, radiation levels, nutrient packs, and what the purpose of socks was. Jace didn't have the heart to answer all of it. Once aboard his ship, he gave her a towel and an old flight jacket. She wore it open, clearly not understanding modesty. Continued to ask questions, especially once she saw the med bay. "You have scanners," she said excitedly. "And samples?" I could extract data, perhaps even reinitiate my own fertility." "Markers?" Jace blinked. "Hold on. Fertility?" She looked at him seriously. "My people were dying out. Her reproductive capacity failed. That's why I volunteered for the cryo mission. To find compatible genetics, you appear extremely compatible." He stared at her, speechless. Then she smiled, just a little. Her golden eyes sparkled with amusement. "I think I like humans." Jace looked back at her and muttered under his breath, "Oh boy, what the hell did I just rescue?" And somewhere in the back of the ship, the AI softly whispered, "Captain, you're in so much trouble." But Jace couldn't stop smiling. Jace woke up the next morning with a strange sound coming from the medbay.whirr. Clink. Zap. He rubbed his eyes, pulled on a shirt, and staggered into the corridor barefoot. There, standing in the middle of the medbay, was Celia, still wearing nothing but his flight jacket, surrounded by open toolkits, active scanners, and a half-disassembled nutrient processor. She looked up as he entered. "Your medical devices are inefficient. I've improved 3 of them. I hope you don't mind." He scratched his head. "Not at all. I usually spend my mornings watching TV, but sure, fixing ancient tech in my underwear is good too." She tilted her head. "Your sarcasm patterns are odd." "You'll get used to it," he muttered, stepping over a crate she'd dragged in. "What are you even doing?" "I need a full scan of your genetic code." He froze. "I'm sorry, what now?" Celia blinked as if she didn't understand the problem. "You are biologically extraordinary. I need to understand the structure. Your bone density alone is triple the mineral saturation of Valerie males. And your sexual dimorphism ratio," as she paused, eyes dipping downward again, astonishing. Sighed. "Are you trying to seduce me or dissect me?" She didn't smile. "I'm not seducing you yet. I'm still collecting data." He didn't know whether to be impressed or nervous. Possibly both. She pointed to the scanning bed. "Lie down." "I want to measure blood flow changes during interaction." Jace raised an eyebrow. "What kind of interaction?" She stepped closer. Touch. Conversation. Stimuli. Stimuli. He repeated, "I've read your files. Humans respond to skin contact. Words. Flirting." He chuckled. "We also respond to breakfast and warm socks. You might be overcomplicating things." Celia ignored the joke and reached out to brush her fingers along his forearm. Touch was feather-light, but her skin was warm and naturally. Warm and textured like soft velvet. "See?" she whispered. Pulse rate increased. Pupils dilated. Subtle tremor. Jace gave a weak laugh. "Yeah, well, it's not every day a gorgeous alien starts seducing me with a med scanner." She blinked. "So you are aroused, Celia." She smiled this time, clearly and on purpose. It was small, but real. "I'm learning," she said. "I think I enjoy watching you react. Did not expect human males to be so expressive." Or so. Her eyes dropped again, very deliberately. Double quotes, ... anatomically dramatic. Jace groaned and covered his face. "This is what I get for playing hero." They sat together after the scan, her legs folded under her, his feet still bare on the cold medbay floor. Celia watched him like he was a living research paper. But it wasn't just science anymore. Something else had started taking root. She no longer looked at him like a lab sample now. It was more like curiosity mixed with affection. "You touch more than we do," she said, voice soft. "Your species, your people, you hug, kiss, hold, we like contact. It's comforting. Builds trust." Leah stared at her own hands. "We used to do that." Before the sterilization programs began, Jace turned toward her. "What programs?" "Decline of Valerie males. It made reproduction rare. Dangerous. We began separating by function scientists, pilots, breeders. We stopped pairing for love. Only purpose. Our touch became clinical, And you? He asked. I was chosen for cryo-exploration. My genes were high quality, but I was alone. Always alone. Jace's chest tightened. He saw it in her eyes, the weight of isolation. Centuries of silence in deep space, waking up in a dead lab with no one left. You're not alone now. She looked at him, really looked, and for once, she didn't analyze him. She just saw him. I know. That night, they sat on the observation deck. Jace offered her a thermal blanket. She didn't take it. She sat beside him instead, tail coiled gently near his boot, eyes watching the stars with quiet wonder. What happens now? She asked. Jace shrugged. Well, first we figure out how to feed you, then we figure out everything else. Everything. Glanced sideways at her. Yeah. Like how much of this? It's just biology, and how much is real? Celia didn't answer right away, and she said, You kissed me earlier, during the scanner test. Kissed me? Oh, studying mouth. Contact. And her voice lowered. I would like to study it again. Jace smiled, leaned in, and whispered, For science. For pleasure, they kissed this time with no scanner, no blinking lights, no tests. Just warm lips and breath, and a quiet hum between them. Her hand slid up his chest. His fingers grazed her thigh. Somewhere deep in the ship, the AI muttered, Emotional bonding confirmed. Hormonal spike detected. Oh dear. Jace pulled back just slightly. You sure you want this? Celia smiled again, slow and certain. I want this. And that was how the second night ended, draped in each other's arms. Tangled in blankets and half laughter, hearts beating fast not from fear, but from something new, something worth staying for. Asterisk, the next morning, Jace walked into the galley. To find Celia trying to cook eggs with a plasma cutter. I don't think that's how omelets work, said, eyebrow raised. I saw the heating element and assumed it was a multi-purpose torch. She replied calmly without stopping. The eggs hissed violently in the small pan and immediately burned black. Jace reached over, gently took the cutter from her hand, and tapped the stove on with a flick of his thumb. See, heat, but controlled heat. We try not to set breakfast on fire. Celia stared at the stove like it had personally insulted her. Your technology is primitive, yet somehow it still makes better eggs than you. She sniffed and walked away, tail flicking behind her like an offended cat. In Valerie Kitchens, meals are injected, not cooked. Jace winced. That sounds ... horrifying. He served 2 plates a few minutes later, then slid one across the table. She poked it with a fork like it might fight back. What is this? She asked. Eggs. From a synth protein canister, tastes like victory and high cholesterol. She tilted her head, then cautiously took a bite. Her eyes went wide. She chewed slowly, then looked at him. Says ... good. I'm full of surprises, he said with a wink. She smiled. A real one. Less scientific, more ... warm, I noticed. They ate in silence for a few moments before Celia finally asked, Why did you come to that moon? Jace paused. Was running from a bounty job gone sideways. Needed a place to hide. Scanned the moon, found the distress signal, figured it'd be old junk, didn't expect to find a beautiful alien, half naked, and calling me enormous. Shh. Look, but the corner of her mouth twitched. You exaggerate. You were very focused on ... measurements. I was disoriented. You also grabbed my belt. Science required it. He laughed. Sure it did. There was a pause, not awkward, more ... aware. The kind of silence that hangs in the air after shared warmth. He noticed the way. Her eyes lingered on him now. Less clinical, more curious in a different way. Not what he was, but who he was. Later, Jace walked her through the ship. Not just the controls, but the quirks. How the nav stabilizer liked to reboot mid-flight, how the food printer never got texture right, how the pilot's seat creaked only during re-entry burns, like an old man groaning. She absorbed everything, listened closely, and then asked, May, I fly it? He blinked. Fly the ship? Yes, I was a pilot. Valari class for scout license. I'm rated in 19 configurations. You're a frozen space biologist who's also a fighter pilot. Had time to train. Well, ... Okay then. They stepped into the cockpit, and Jace watched as she settled into the co-pilot's chair like it was made for her. Her posture shifted, no longer the uncertain stasis survivor. She was composed, confident. Her fingers moved across the interface like she remembered the rhythm of space instinctively. Engines cycling, she murmured. Stabilizers at 63%. Drift lock disengaged. Course plotted. Stared. I've never seen anyone do that without cursing at least once. I do not curse, she said. Except in Valari. And most of our words would offend your ship's voice sensors. Jace smirked. Now, I definitely want to hear them. She turned her head slightly. Later, when we're not accelerating near a gravity well. Over the next few days, their closeness stopped feeling accidental. Celia no longer waited for Jace to initiate touch. She brushed his arm when passing him. She sat beside him, not across. She stole bites of his food. One night, she fell asleep next to him on the old couch. In the rec room, her head tucked against his shoulder, tail draped over his boot like a claim. The bond was deepening. More than physical. Something rooted itself between them. Quiet, steady, undeniable. But there were ... complications. One evening, she stood in the med bay again, scanning her own blood. Jace leaned against the doorway, watching her frown deepen. Something wrong? She hesitated. My hormonal cycle is activating. He blinked. That's a good thing for me? Yes. But it's only triggered when imprinting begins. My species doesn't release pairing hormones unless the subject is viable, trusted, ... and wanted. Jace stepped inside. You're saying I'm triggering that? She nodded. Yes, you are, he exhaled. Well, could slow down. If you want, take some space. She looked at him like he'd just spoken nonsense. Why would I want space? I want you. Her voice was steady, firm, not desperate, not needy. Just honest? She walked closer, lifted a hand to his chest, and placed it there palm flat, warm against his heartbeat. In Valari terms, she said, this is mating protocol. You've surpassed study. You are now ... priority. Jace swallowed. Hard. Okay, that sounds ... serious. It is. He gently rested his hand over hers. Good, because I'm not leaving you behind. For the first time, her expression faltered just for a moment. A small crack in the armor. The weight of being left forgotten, frozen for centuries ... It was still there, but Jace wasn't leaving. He meant what he said. That night, they didn't talk about science or ships or extinct planets. They curled into each other in the quiet. Warmth of the sleeping cabin. There were no scanners, no charts. Just breath and skin and closeness. Her hand in his hair. His mouth on her throat, slow, deep, deliberate, and for the first time in 2 centuries. Celia Vorn didn't feel like the last of her kind. She felt chosen. She felt home. And Jace, he knew, without question, that he'd never be able to sleep. In that bunk alone again. Jace had always thought of space as cold, quiet, and empty. But now, floating through the outer belts with Celia curled beside him in his bunk, it felt different, warm, full, like the stars finally meant something. Mornings were strange now. She'd wake before him, Valare, circadian cycles ran shorter, and he'd find her in the galley, cross-legged on the counter, analyzing nutrient bars like they were sacred relics. She hated all of them. These taste like compressed sadness, she said, sniffing one. They're not that bad, Jace replied, biting into one. Okay, this one might actually be soap. By midday, they were running scans together. Celia insisted on recalibrating every sensor by hand, saying the algorithms were lazy. Jace didn't argue. It was kind of nice having someone else in his cockpit. She didn't need to talk constantly. Just being near her was enough. But every now and then. When he looked at her, when their fingers brushed at the console or their knees bumped under the table, the air changed, thicker. Charged, one night, while adjusting the thermal regulators, Celia suddenly turned and said, "Do you know what heat lock is?" Jace blinked. "Is that a Valari thing? Or are you flirting?" "Both," she said flatly. He set his tools down. "Okay, now you've got my attention." Celia explained that during peak imprint bondings, especially when trust and mating cycles, Linda Valari female could enter what her people called heat lock, a physiological state triggered by prolonged contact with a genetically ideal partner. "Let me guess," Jay said. "You're entering it." "I'm resisting it." I caught him off guard. "Why?" "Because once triggered," she said, "it doesn't fade. It means commitment, permanence, a bond that cannot be undone unless broken by trauma or abandonment." Stared at her. "Wait, are you telling me if we, get too close, I'd basically be your permanent mate?" She nodded slowly. "Yes," he swallowed. "Like, biologically, deeply." Jay sat back, quiet for a while, then he gave a soft smile. "And here I thought I was just charming." "You are more than charming," Celia said. "You are compatible. You're dangerous to me." The words landed heavy. Not bad, just real. He reached for her hand, slowly, carefully. "Listen," he said, "I didn't pull you out of that stasis pod for a one-night experiment. I don't do temporary, not with someone who looks at me like I'm worth memorizing." Her golden eyes softened. Her tail curled loosely around his ankle. "Not possessive, just ... there. Connected. I want to bond," she said softly. "I want to choose, not for science." Jace didn't hesitate. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers, and whispered, "Then choose me." Later that night, when her body glowed softly beneath his touch, when her skin radiated heat he'd never felt before, when her breath trembled against his neck, Jace understood exactly what heat lock meant, and he didn't run from it. He welcomed it, but not everything in the stars was warm. 3 days later, their sensors picked up a long-range ping encrypted, directional, not civilian, a Dorada-class signal. Alien, sharp, and coded for genetic cataloging. Celia froze the moment it flashed on screen. "That's a collector scan," she said, voice flat. Jace frowned. "From who?" She turned slowly. "The Genome Collective. They used to be Valari. Allies. After our collapse, they hunted for surviving reproductive lines, not to help to harvest." His jaw clenched. "You mean they find survivors and breed them or sell them? Hybridize where they can. Dissect where they can't." Jace's stomach twisted. "And now they're scanning you?" "No," she said quietly, eyes narrowing. "They're scanning you." He blinked. "Me?" Nodded. "They've seen your DNA markers from the beacon logs. They know you're Terran. Human male genetics are rare, potent. You'd be considered a high-priority acquisition." Jace looked at the signal again. It was circling, probing. "Not approaching yet, like a shark scenting blood." "What do we do?" he asked. Celia's hands balled into fists. "We hide, or we fight." Jace turned to her. "You've seen what I can do with a wrench. What do you think?" Her lips curled. "You're not running?" He stepped close. "I don't leave my crew. Right now, you're all I've got." That night they rerouted. All non-essential power masked their thermal profile, drifted through a shattered asteroid belt, cloaked in cold debris. Jace could feel the tension in her body every time the proximity alarm pinged. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, fingers clenched tight, tail coiled around her legs like a spring. "They always take," she whispered. "They always find us." "Not this time," he said. "They don't get you. They don't get me." "Don't get us." She looked at him. Then not with fear, but with something fierce, possessive, protective. "I'll kill for you," she said. "You understand that?" He didn't flinch. "Good, because I'd burn their damn ship if they touched you." The ping faded by morning. The collector hadn't found them. The ship stayed cold, silent. But Jace knew they couldn't run forever. Still, that night, when she crawled into bed beside him, her body warmer than ever, her lips finding his without hesitation. He knew something had changed. They weren't just bonded. They were tethered, chosen, claimed, and if the stars wanted to tear them apart, they'd have to go through both of them together. 2 days after they escaped the collectors. Scan. Jace woke up to find Celia wasn't beside him. He blinked, stretched, and rubbed at his eyes. The bunk was cold without her, too quiet, too empty. He found her in the observation deck, sitting cross-legged in front of the wide starfield window. The galaxy poured in around her, casting violet light over her skin. She was wearing nothing but one of his old shirts, oversized, wrinkled, and draped off one shoulder. Her tail was still. Her hands rested quietly in her lap. That alone was a red flag, Celia asked softly. She didn't look at him, just stared at the stars. Ran simulations, she said. Scenarios, outcomes, probability trees. Jace stepped closer. Of what? Of us, she replied, voice distant. Of staying together. Of breeding compatibility. Of raising a hybrid offspring in a galaxy that doesn't want us. He sat beside her, close but not touching, letting her decide. And she exhaled. It shook just a little. Some outcomes were beautiful, peaceful. We live on a frontier moon. You raise plants, I raise children. You still can't cook. I pretend not to mind. He chuckled softly. Sounds accurate so far. You're solid. But other simulations. She paused. They end in fire. Raiders, collectors, people who see us as a threat, who see you as property, a resource to claim. Jace was quiet for a long time then. He said, You're scared. She finally turned her head. Her golden eyes shimmered. Not with fear. With guilt. I imprinted on you, she said. Flee. The lock is permanent now. My body has aligned to yours. Hormones, cycle, even emotional centers. You're not just someone I care for, Jace. You're part of my neurochemistry. He swallowed. And that's bad? It's irreversible? If you died tomorrow, I wouldn't recover. Not mentally, not biologically. He looked at her, really looked, at the sharp lines of her cheekbones, the soft way her hair fell, the way she held herself like someone who'd always had to be strong. Alone, he reached out, slow and steady, and took her hand. Then I just won't die. She blinked. Jace, I mean it, he said, eyes fierce now. You think I don't know what I signed up for? I knew the second you looked at me like I wasn't just a rescuer. You looked at me like I was yours, and damn it, I liked it. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Almost, he scooted closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. Her head leaned into his shoulder. You're scared of loving me? He murmured. I'm scared of losing you, she whispered back. Then we don't lose. We fight. We hide. We build. Together. Long pause passed. Then she said it quiet, but clear. I want to carry your child. The words hit Jace like a pulse through his chest. Not because they shocked him, but because they didn't. He'd thought about it, quietly, secretly, in those moments between sleep and waking. The idea of her growing round with life, his life was something primal, something real, something grounding. You sure? We asked. I mean, this isn't just about biology, right? She turned, fully facing him now. This is about hope. That night was different. It wasn't just heat and hunger. It was slow, reverent, like building something brick by brick, touch by touch. Jace ran his fingers down the soft curve of her spine. Celia arched into him, her hands in his hair, her tail curled tight around his thigh like a promise. They kissed. Between words, between gasps, between moments that didn't need language, she whispered in Valari. He didn't know the words, but he felt the meaning in the way her voice shook. When they finished, she didn't pull away. She didn't roll over.
Oh.
She pressed her palm flat against his chest, closed her eyes, and said, It's begun. He stared at her. You mean my system has accepted yours? The fertilization window is active. You're inside me now. In every way? Jace wasn't sure if he was supposed to say something clever or scientific or deeply emotional, so he just said the truth. I've never loved anyone this much. She opened her eyes, met his, and said, then let's make something the stars can't ignore. The next morning, Jace was adjusting the nav system when he saw something unusual in the logs. A silent ping, not hostile, not Dorati, but human. He frowned, tracing it. A deep space cargo hauler. Civilian class, shielded but open comes. Its ID signature was scrambled, but one thing was clear. It was tracking him. Celia, he called. She appeared in seconds, already alert. We've got company, he said. She read the scan. Her face went blank. Not collectors, not pirates. Jace said slowly, this one's Terran. But it's not broadcasting a trade signal. That's a scout pattern. She looked at him, voice steady. They're after you, Jace. Not me this time. Because someone, somewhere, figured out what you are. A human male who survived cross-species conception with a Valerie female. He stared at the blip on the screen. It was getting closer. You think they're coming to congratulate us? He asked. Her voice was cold. No, they're coming too. Claim you. And just like that, the honeymoon ended. Now they weren't just lovers. They were wanted. Asterisk, the Terran ship didn't announce itself when it arrived. It didn't hail, didn't flash weapons, didn't pretend to be friendly. It just trailed them in silence, like a shark in deep space, one that knew exactly how much time its prey had left. Jace switched the Serenity into stealth glide. Cold running past a dead binary star to mask their heat. Celia sat beside him, her hand tight on the console, the pulse in her wrist beating fast. She hadn't spoken in 15 minutes. Neither had he, when they finally got a scan off the pursuing ship. Celia cursed under her breath, in Velari, sharp and venomous. What? Jace asked. It's not just Terran, it's corporate. That made his gut twist. Corporate scouts weren't soldiers. They were worse scavengers, working for pharma labs, genome banks, and black market breeders. They didn't kill you. They cataloged you. Jace leaned back in the seat and muttered, they want our kid. No, Celia said firmly. They want you. Child is secondary. The data lives in your body. They want to study how your DNA survived the hybrid process. They'll bleed you dry to get it. Her eyes flicked toward him, suddenly fierce. I will not let them take you. You're pregnant, Jace said, reaching over, placing a hand on her stomach gently. You shouldn't be the one fighting. You're mine, she growled. No one takes what's mine. That was when he realized something. It wasn't just biology anymore. Never had been. Celia wasn't bonded because her hormones made her cling to him. She was bonded because she chose to be. Every second, every breath. She didn't want a sperm donor. She wanted a partner. And Jace. He wanted nothing more than to deserve that. The corporate ship made its move 3 hours later. Sudden and sharp. A jump burn lit up behind them, pushing through their stealth wake like a knife. Jace yanked the helm hard, Celia already rerouting power to the shields. Evasion or engage, he shouted. Run, she snapped. Don't let them tag you. Jace dove the Serenity toward a debris belt, remnants of an old mining station. Torn apart decades ago, satellites, rock chunks, derelict, or freighters. It was chaos. Perfect cover, but the scout followed. Torpedo lock in 5 seconds, Celia warned. Fingers flying over controls. We can't outfly them. We're not going to, Jace muttered. We're going to outsmart them. Or. He banked the ship toward a spinning freighter core dead, but still giving off a mild magnetic signature. He rerouted power to mimic its signal, then cut engines entirely. The ship coasted in silently, slow and steady. Brace, he said. The Serenity clipped the freighter's hull hard. The sound of metal screaming across metal echoed through the frame, but the magnetic seals held. They locked in. It looked like junk. Jack killed every light, every screen. Even the cabin heating. Silence fell like a blanket. The pursuing ship drifted. In moments later, it hovered, scanning, passive, aggressive, patient. Celia's fingers found Jace's hand in the dark. They waited. 10 minutes 20. The ping faded. They were gone. Jace let out a long breath. He hadn't realized he'd been holding that. Was close, he whispered. Cell didn't answer right away. Her grip tightened slightly. Then she said, "We can't keep running. I know. They'll come again. And next time they won't scan, they'll fire." Jace nodded slowly. "We find a place they won't follow. Somewhere. Outside the major charts? Somewhere dirty? Small?" He looked at her. "You mean like a home?" She blinked. "I've never had one." "Well," he said, reaching up to cup her face gently, "maybe it's time." They detached from the freighter and burned for the edge of the charted system, toward a half-mapped rim world called Tarnus 5. It had no known value. No settlements. Just dust, ice, and the ruins of an old subspace relay. In other words, perfect. The descent was rough. The Serenity took some damage-breaking atmosphere, and Celia's readings spiked from the strain. "Still okay?" Jace asked. She nodded, but sweat dotted her brow. "The embryo is stable," she said, "but I need rest soon. No more hygie turns." They landed in a narrow canyon out of satellite range. No comms, no pings, just stillness. Jace sealed the hatch. Celia lay back on the med bay couch, eyes closed. "Do you want something?" he asked softly. "Food? Water?" She opened one eye. "You." He blinked. Now she smiled. "Just close. I want you near." He sat beside her, took her hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You make me feel not extinct," she murmured. Jace didn't say anything. Psh. He just pulled the blanket up over both of them and kissed. Her forehead, they stayed like that for hours. Later that night, Case went out alone to rig a sensor blind and some proximity alarms. He stood on the rocky ridge looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, dire governments wanted what was growing inside his ship. Inside her, he couldn't stop them all, but he could protect her. He could protect their child. He looked back. At the ship, dim lights glowing behind thick panels. A home that didn't exist a month ago. And he knew, without question, that he'd burn the galaxy down before letting anyone take it away. Back inside, Celia sat on the edge of the bed, one hand on her stomach, humming something soft, a Valerie lullaby, maybe. She looked up when he returned. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah." Then he stepped forward, dropped to his knees in front of her, placed his hands gently over hers, and said, "Marry me." She blinked, stunned. "What?"
Oh.
"I don't care what planet we're on or how many species are watching. I want to build something with you, officially, forever. You, me, and the little one." Her throat worked once. Then she said, "Velari don't marry." Jace smiled. "Then let's start a new tradition." And for the first time, Celia didn't overthink it. She didn't scan probabilities. She didn't model outcomes. She just leaned down, kissed him slow, and whispered, "Yes." Asterisk, the wedding wasn't fancy. It didn't have guests. No speeches, no music, no food. Just them. A vow whispered in the belly of a half-repaired ship. While a dust storm howled outside and the galaxy hunted for them, Jace had cut 2 wires from the old cum array and twisted them into rings. Celia laughed when she saw them and kissed him like she never wanted to stop. "I've never been claimed by anyone before," she whispered, forehead against his. "Not claimed," he replied. "Chosen." Their first official act as partners was building. The Serenity needed work. So did the planet. Tarnus 5 wasn't much a gray, rocky world with thin air, no cities, and no reason for anyone to look twice, which made it perfect. They parked the ship in a deep canyon and camouflaged it with heat-deflecting panels. Celia adjusted the mineral filters to process breathable air. Jace carved out living quarters in a nearby cave system, adding power lines and solar arrays by. The 3rd week, they had a small home. A shelter with a stove, a mattress, storage crates for clothes and supplies. Simple, sturdy. The kind of place you could raise something precious. A child. For instance, Celia's pregnancy advanced faster than human standards. Her body was built for adaptation. Within a month, her belly had begun to swell. She moved slower, but with purpose. The fire in her hadn't dimmed. It had just focused. Jace woke every morning with her beside him, curled up, her tail wrapped gently around his thigh like it was instinct. Protective, possessive, loving. Sometimes she'd talk to the baby. In Valari, other times, she simply hummed. Jace started to recognize the melodies, low, haunting lullabies sung in the dark. They made the whole canyon feel warmer. They were surviving, but peace doesn't last forever. The warning came in the form of static. One night, the relay tower buried behind a ridge picked up a faint, irregular signal. Not corporate, not alien. Military.jace decoded it by hand using an old Earth script tool. It was short. Scout Unit Orion Red 7, requesting planetary sweep of Tarnos 5. Possible unauthorized habitation. Genetic priority match. Terran male class. Celia stood behind him, arms wrapped around her belly, eyes sharp. They've found you again. Turned, we've got time. If they're requesting permission, they haven't landed yet. We don't wait, she said. We run. I want you stressed, then don't argue. They moved quickly. The backup shelter was ready. Jace had built it a month ago, buried in a secondary ravine, insulated, shielded from scans. Celia transferred everything important. Nutrient packs, med kits, their scanned embryo logs. Jace loaded. Weapons, tools, the emergency reactor core. They left the Serenity behind. A painful choice, but necessary. If it was found, so be it. It had served its purpose. That's Cell Y. Said goodbye to it by touching the hold gently. You kept me warm when I had no people, she whispered. JC watched from a few steps away. He didn't interrupt, just waited, and when she turned, he offered his hand. They vanished into the rocks. 2 days later, the scout ship landed. Terran Whitehall, black insignia. They came with drones, sensors, pulse rifles. They tore the ship apart looking for Jace, scanned for DNA residue. When they didn't find him, they scorched the site and left a beacon, a promise. We will return. But they never found the cave, because Celia had buried the entrance behind a heedless rockfall, and Jace had shut off every power source inside. In that silent darkness, they huddled and waited and held each other. Weeks passed, the sun rose and fell in crimson hues. Beacon remained in the distance, blinking like a warning, but no new ships came. Celia's labor started on the 56th day. It wasn't quiet, wasn't easy. She screamed in a language Jace didn't understand. He held her hand, whispered to her, poured water down her throat, kept the cloth cool on her head. She clawed into the rock with every contraction, eyes wild. Body soaked in sweat and trembling with power, and then, just before Donna, cried not hers, but smaller, softer. Nooch Jakes caught the child himself, wrapped in a thermal blanket. It was small but strong. Pale skin, soft downy hair, a tail. 4 fingers, each tipped with tiny ridges. Her eyes opened, bright gold, like Celia's butt, curious, blinking. Unafraid. She's beautiful, Jace said, his voice shaking. Celia reached for the baby, cradled her close. Her body was still shivering, but her expression was fierce. Complete. Name her, she whispered. Jace hesitated, then said, Hope. Celia smiled. Yes, she said. She is. Years passed. The beacon eventually stopped blinking. No more scouts came. The world forgot them, but they didn't mind. Their cave became a home. Their home became a settlement. Jace expanded the shelter room by room. It's how to hold a wrench, how to reroute power, how to climb without fear. Selya. Taught her Valary words. Taught her how to fight, how to hide, how to love. Hope grew fast, strong, sharp. She had Jace's stubbornness and Celia's grace. She ran with the speed of someone born for a galaxy that had tried to erase her, and she laughed. All the time. One evening, as the 3 of them sat outside their shelter watching the double sunset, Hope asked, Will we ever leave this place? Jace looked to Celia. She gave a soft nod. Maybe one day, Jace said. When the stars are quiet, when it's safe. Hope leaned her head against her mother's side. Then I want to see it all. The stars, the ships, the danger. You will, Celia said, but not to run. Hope looked up. Then why? Celia smiled. To belong. And Jace, sitting between his bonded mate and his brilliant hybrid daughter, knew the truth. They weren't running anymore. They were starting something. Something that would outlast the wars. The collectors. The cores. Because love wasn't just biology, it was will. And they'd built theirs like a fortress, brick by brick. Touch by touch. Choice by choice. Together. And no one, not the stars, not the governments, not even time would ever take it away. The end.